Hello, true duelists. YGO Strats here, desperately wishing for just a little bit more, a little more support. Please, Konami, just one more good card. Welcome to You Should Play, a series where I talk about why I play and why I think you should play various decks. This week I'm talking about Vendread, the deck that never was. Like a number of TCG exclusive archetypes, it's one that had a promising start in its first wave, but steadily was unable to live up to the hype that the community had wanted from it. That's not to say that it's bad by any means, it's just that when Konami has given us TCG exclusives the likes of Burning Abyss and Cosmo, there's a bit of a standard that people hope for when it comes to a TCG exclusive deck. But despite it never being a high-level meta contender, it's a deck that surprises me with its power level. Is that because it's a solid ritual deck with surprising resiliency? Or is it just able to abuse good generic zombie support? As the commercial says, why not both? They're an interesting archetype. Art-wise, they're based on Spawn predominantly with some Resident Evil, again a little bit of both. There's also a children's card game appropriate level of body horror going on in the monster design that really reminds me of John Carpenter's The Thing, which means playing it evokes some level of my inner desire to look more like Kurt Russell did from that movie, or at the very least just have his beard. My god, have you seen that thing? That is majestic. Still insanely infectious disease across all species, dope-looking zombie fighters, and best of all, a monster that Warner Brothers Animation Studios would pronounce Chimera. Chimera. It's also got a neat lore going on, the story of a man avenging his wife. Draw some parallels to Fox Television's old show 24, which is very much out of left field, I know, but 24's Jack Bauer also had a Where's My Wife storyline going on, and he killed 198 people in 6 days, meaning about 33 people each and every day for over a week, which means that's more than a single person killed every single hour, which Hollywood might make seem small, but the notion that he killed that many people is somewhere between horrifying and hilarious to me, and I feel compelled to mention it. And that's how many people Vendread Slayer killed in the lore. It's canon, I'm saying it now. Provide lore that proves me wrong and I'll change this, but also I'm lying and I won't. It's Yu-Gi-Oh lore, dude. You look at 12 pieces of card art, you figure out a general storyline, and then you find out from some translation on YGO.org 4 years after the deck came out that there's an additional 48 story points that just have never been mentioned, and it turns out Chimera was Slayer's dad, and the crows were his wife, and it's all an allegory for the slow and the steady win the race or something completely absurd. I don't know storytelling, if you can't tell from all this. I've never actually consumed media. I just play children's card games, okay? That's not media, that's purgatory. I just duel. And I talk about why you should too. It's a bomb-ass ritual deck with access to zombie tools, and when it can play like it was designed to, it's a blast. Or if you instead to play it to be good, it's a really fun combo deck. The deck is a ritual-based one with regular effect monsters that give buffs when tributed from the fields for a ritual summon, and usually have some sort of effect to revive themselves back onto the field for more ritual. As such, the rituals themselves aren't anything particularly fancy, but if you get the bonus effects, they can become quite a nuisance. Starting with the main man himself, the card you'll be playing one way or another, regardless of if it's a lore deck or a competitive deck or a pet deck, because he is the key in all of it. No, his name isn't Jar Jar Banks.
Jar Jar is the key to all this.
It's Vendread
Slayer.
Your level 6 ritual, the important name in the deck, and the owner of what is a staple of quality in every TCG exclusive deck. It has a battle phase effect. Once per battle, it can banish a zombie from your grave to gain 300 attack, getting a little bit beefier battle by battle. And best of all for our hero is that if it's sent from the field to the grave while ritual summoned, it'll add any ritual spell from deck to hand, and foolish any Vendread monster as well, meaning it fully gives you the means to replace itself. And worst case, if it wasn't ritual summoned and just revived from the grave by other means, its level makes it fantastic material for Beatrice. Chimera is bad but looks cool in a God has truly left us kind of way, so I'm just gonna throw it up here so we can all appreciate that art. Battle Lord is a level 7 that has a Shockmaster Light effect. That is to say, it can banish a Vendread card from your grave to declare either monster, spell, or trap, and the opponent can't activate cards or effects of that card type for the rest of the turn. If nothing else, it is great for saving you from hand traps, and it has a similar effect to Slayer, adding a ritual monster from deck to hand and foolishing a Vendread if while ritual summoned it's sent from field to grave. Vendread Executor is not Executor, as I am constantly tempted to say, Pokemon has ruined me, is always treated as Slayer. While on the field, a level 8 with 3000 attack who, while ritual summoned, is the only card the opponent can target. Its floating effect will require it to be destroyed by battle or the opponent's card effect while in its owner's monster zone, but it'll add any Vendread card from your deck to your hand. If nothing else, it looks cool and it's big chungus numbers, so that's... I said that out loud. If nothing else, it looks cool and it has a big number attached to it, so you can just swing hard with it. They're also getting a new toy in a few months from when I'm releasing this video. Scavenger, as it's been translated either way, is a new level 8 with a quick effect to tribute a zombie monster to gain attack equal to its original attack. And if you control or Vendread Slayer, while this is in the grave, you can revive it, but it's banished when it leaves the field. Self-reviving rituals, what's not to love? Just gotta love the OCG just giving TCG decks actual good toys. These are all solid for the most part and varying degrees of playable, and can be bolstered by certain effects depending on what you use to summon it. For example, Core will make any Vendread summoned using it untargetable by card effect, and has the effect to banish a zombie from your grave to summon itself from the graveyard. So both pretty solid effects, pretty good. And it's the core, so it's like the core of the... I got nothing. Anima can banish itself from the grave to target a banished Vendread and then summon that, but will lock you into summoning zombies for the rest of the turn that you use it. Its ritual buff will let any Vendread ritual banish any monster it destroys by battle, and is not really used for that particular effect. Sturges can reveal a Vendread in your hand if sent to the grave to summon itself for free, but will be banished when it leaves the field. It'll give rituals the effect to draw a card and discard one if the ritual destroys a monster by battle, and is really only played if you're playing a Link spam climby version, because this effect ain't that good in my opinion. Hound Horde can discard a Vendread card from the hand to revive itself from grave, and will give the Vendread the ability to quick effect banish a spell or trap the opponent controls, and is one of the good ones-ish. Revenants is one of the bad ones, but also kind of the best one, so figure that statement out. Most importantly, it is the official Konami artwork for the Me and the Boys at 2 AM Looking for Beans meme, which I wrote down. It can summon itself from the grave if destroyed by an opponent while in your possession, but more importantly, the benefit is that it'll give your rituals a quick effect to target and banish special summoned monsters. So this is your real means of screwing with their plays on their turns. If only it were slightly more playable, it'd be like a 3 of, but unfortunately it's just a self-reviving beater. Whomst knows. Scar is one of the new ones, which means it's one of the good ones. If it's sent to the grave, it'll add any Vendread spell or trap, finally giving the deck a spell and trap searcher. And if a monster on the field is tributed while it's in your grave, you can banish another zombie from your grave to bring this back onto the field, but while you control it, you can only special summon Vendreads. They did this because Beatrice is a card and Slayer's level 6, and more importantly because Konami are cowards. A Vendread Savior is the Link 2 that's treated as Slayer. While on the field with 2 effects, once per turn it can recover a Vendread from your grave to your hand. Fantastic. And during damage calc, it can foolish any zombie monster to have the opponent's monster lose attack equal to the sent monster's level times 200. The battle aspect is a tad lame when going first, but the foolish is incredibly valuable. It's also a really cool looking monster, and depending on what kind of degenerate you are, you could focus on the cheeks.
Clapping cheeks!
For spell and traps, they've got some of the best that they could want and some of the worst. The beauty is each of their ritual spells can summon any of their monsters. So everything for everything. A staple of a good ritual deck. Revendread Origin is the orgy spell that can summon your Vendread rituals from your hand or grave, and contribute monsters from hand or field, or banish them from the grave to make the levels equal or exceed the ritual. And if Revendread Slayer would be destroyed by battle or card effect, it can banish itself from grave instead. This is a phenomenal ritual spell. Just about any ritual deck would kill for this sort of thing, and since it mentions Slayer by name, it is a pre-prep target, which is phenomenal. And even better, it shows the lore. Look, dude, it's his wife. Vendread Evolution is their second ritual spell that can summon a Vendread ritual from the hand or grave and send materials from your hand, field, or one Vendread from the deck specifically whose level equal or exceed the rituals. The catch is the monster summoned is destroyed in the end phase and you can only use one of it per turn. Still, a great way to get rituals in the grave, worth considering. The newest ritual spell is another phenomenal one, summoning again from hand or grave, and this one will special summon any Vendread monster from your hand, grave, or deck, except for a copy of Scavenger face down, and then tributes monster from the field, including the one summoned from the deck or wherever. It just flat out cheats out your monsters and then lets you tribute them from the field to give all your ritual bonus buffs. Just fixing the glaring flaw in the archetype. Hell yes, OCG, go off kings and queens. Their other spell and trap lineup is lacking, to say the least. They do have an E-Telly that will need you to send a zombie from hand or field to the grave, a trap to set up a ritual summon if you already have the setups required for a ritual summon, really, and there are about 3 other ones really worth mentioning. Vendread Knights is a field spell that can discard a card to add any Vendread monster from deck to hand, and has some sort of extra attack by banishing a Vendread from the grave. I don't know, I don't use that often. The first effect is a Rhoda, and that's what really matters. Vendread Reorigin is a very cheeky tech. It targets and tributes an opponent's monster that has a level, and will then summon a token to your field with the same level, and while you control that token, you can only summon Vendread monsters. Mostly good as a removal for specific decks, but it can also help get you the tribute material for a ritual, so it's not terrible. It just, you know, sucks against links, which have been a thing since Vendread, so cool design. Lastly, I like to mention Daybreak, a trap that needs you to control a ritual summoned Vendread ritual monster and have less cards than the opponent, but it'll destroy all cards on the field except for your chosen ritual, and that ritual won't be able to attack while it's face up. This is mostly good as a last minute board wipe and more fun than practical in my eyes, but the look on an opponent's face if it goes off is divine. The deck also has access to the plethora of good generic zombie cards. Shiranui Solitaire into Unizombie for easy synchro plays. It can also help set up the graveyard, as can Gozuki. Mezuki can help abuse that graveyard you've set up, and then there's just other techs such as Zombie World or even a Baylor Drock if you're feeling it. They also can abuse ritual support in general. Incantations, I've seen people use Diviner of the Herald, and just all the classic ritual good stuff players like. Ben 10 is at 2 now, after all. Moving on from the cards onto the deck, the thing that surprised me the most about playing Vendread was just how well it could actually combo off. When I first took a look at the deck, I expected to play a simple Protect the Castle style of deck, where I make a big ritual or two with some inherited buffs to really push the opponent and make for a game slowly by protecting my king and queen. I don't know. Chess probably isn't the best, comparison for Vendread, but whatever. The important thing is, the reality is making a pair with solid buffs will require a good amount of setup, and the payoff for a single monster that requires sometimes up to 4 of your cards is a bit of a costly one. The exchange is a solid boss monster of sorts, but the high investment can really deter you from going for that style of play. That's okay though, because what this deck can do in place of that is combo the hell off for days. The monsters all have revival effects in the grave that have made the deck very capable at link climbing, and being a ritual deck, that link climbing gives access to a little lesser known Link 3 in Nephthys the Sacred Flame, who if you make using 3 ritual monsters is an indestructible, untargetable 4800 beater that is a pain in the ass to deal with, and it gives Garried Arrows. Plus, since a properly summoned ritual monster can be revived from the grave, that means Mizuki's reviving your rituals can make this particular link much easier to summon than you might think. If you're truly insane, you could even try smoke screening between 2 different builds between games. Build a zombie spam core version in one game, and then side into ritual control for games 2 or maybe 3 by abusing the aforementioned ritual cards like maybe incantations, or maybe even the ritual djinns. Yeah, there's more than just one of the djinns that got banished back from Necroz's format, both banished from, the grave and banned from the game. The djinns are all monsters that can be banished from the grave as part of the material for a ritual summon, and give bonus effects regardless of whether or not they've been on the field. A sort of generic Vendread for any ritual deck, but still decent if you're okay with adding in an extra brick or two. The noteworthy ones include an effect to rip from the opponent's hand if the ritual monster deals battle damage to the opponent, make the ritual monster untargetable, and for all of you who truly hate Sword Soul with a passion or just synchro decks in general, a synchro skill drain specifically for synchros. Why not? Or if you're a fan of taking a good deck and throwing your favorite cards into it, Drytron is generic ritual support when it gets down to it, and I can promise you these days no one is expecting Battle Lord to show up in the middle of a Drytron combo. That or I haven't played Drytron in too long and no longer know what common techs are, but I'm going with the first one because it sounds better. I suppose you could throw a small Vendread engine into another zombie deck as well. Drytron did actually play a very small Vendread engine at one point in time in the form of, I think, 2 Battle Lord and 1 Origin. Memory's a bit fuzzy on that. I'm sure you could do something similar in a dedicated zombie deck though.
Slayer
Is level 6 after all, and Beatrice is great to abuse with zombies. It's just natural born synergy right there. Truthfully, my strongest memory of playing this deck was after its last wave of support, when the general consensus was the deck was a disappointment of sorts. I kind of felt the same way, but I already had all the cards, so I decided to make the most of my dollar and play it against some buddies. And despite what the Redditors had told me about it being just underwhelmingly bad, I had a blast. At its worst, I was making the same sorts of plays I did with my pure generic zombie deck, and when I could resolve Slayer's effect to float, I felt like I had cracked the code. Like I could see every equation. Who would have thought a deck filled with self-reviving zombies could lead to a strong Link engine? And even more, who could have thought that the Nightmare engine that was then newly introduced led to easy synergy with anything that could put monsters on board? But it isn't really 2018 anymore, and we don't have Nightmare Goblin anymore. And thankfully, we also don't have nightmares about the Goblin anymore. Funny how life works out sometimes. Instead, what we have is activating Slayer and getting Ash Blossomed. This is, of course, a joke, since this deck is actually younger than Ash Blossom, and that has been happening since day one. Normally, I'd like to go over the weaknesses of the deck here, but today I'm kind of just going to shotgun them. It's a ritual deck that dies to things that will stop you from searching, and it's a zombie deck that wants to abuse the graveyard. So if they shut off your graveyard by making it banished or dweller or whatever, you're going to have a bad time. In all versions, these are the biggest issues that the deck will face, and these two are common enough problems or strengths that the meta has to come up against, so people will have an easy enough time understanding and trying to stop them. The real critique I'm going to go into is the inherent problem just with their design.
skill issue.
Not art-wise, mind you, these things look great. The Djinn ritual support monsters debuted in 5Ds. Absolute Power Force and Stardust Overdrive, as early as 2009. Vendread was released in Code of the Duelist in 2017, just shy of a decade later. The Djinn monsters work better at what they do than the Vendread monsters, and they're doing the same things. I understand they didn't want to make them too strong, but even if you remove the stipulation that the monster has to be on field and tributed to give the ritual a buff, the deck doesn't become insane. They specify Vendread ritual monsters, meaning it can't be generic, and the mechanics of ritual summoning mean that you can't over-tribute to make it insanely buffed
Slayer
by tributing all 11 levels of the buffs. You're getting at most 3, and the best one of banishing a monster in terms of being broken makes it so that you've eaten up like half of your levels on any ritual monster. So at most, you're probably only going to get 2 or 3 effects on that, and they're not going to be the good ones. Still, why the fuck can't I just get the buffs? The deck would be playable in terms of its core strategy if that was the case. And don't get me wrong, you can do cool stuff with the deck now as it is, but I think a number of people would agree with me when I say that when I read these cards initially, be it for me at reveal in 2018, or if you're just finding out about the deck and looking into them, you want to build the deck to summon the rituals with the buffs as the boss monsters. not to make a generic engine access code deck. It at least gives the deck more of its own style and feel of play. Making a buffed Slayer will cost like the same amount of resource that could otherwise be a strong Link play in its place that doesn't go all in on the biggest target possible of, hey, when you get rid of this guy, I'm kind of screwed. The newest pieces of support do really help with that somewhat. Summoning monsters from the deck to tribute them means you don't have to open the God Hand to get an inexpensive beefy Slayer. Just one of the 2 Vendreads you want and the new ritual spell. And Lord knows the deck was given enough ways to access its monsters specifically. Just now in 2022 are we finally getting a Vendread spell and trap searcher. Still, I do really love this deck. Build-A-Bear rituals, as I like to refer to them, that can have some solid effects, and nothing makes me smile like explaining that an executor summoned using core on field means that nothing on my field can be targeted. This is the list, and in all honesty, it's probably a little too heavy on rituals. I think if you're playing to win, you should probably have 6 at the max, especially when you take into account that pre-prep and preparation of rites are cards. I'm not playing Evolution as of now, but I think that could change. I do think it's a nice one-of as a ritual spell to just get a ritual out from your deck by sending it as the full tribute, and early access to Scavenger seems like it's a smart thing to be doing. Glow Up Bloom is actually also another means to search your ritual monsters, and it's a tuner, which can come up since in this build I've opted to try out those new zombie synchros from Dimension Force. Ash even actually has a side use beyond being a good hand trap, because Ash is a Mizuki target by itself, and it plus Battle Lord is a very easy baron, or as I like to call it, an easy bonhomme-de-neige. Scar is also just an awesome card, a free body for a ritual or for making a Vendread Savior, and it adds your ritual spells or anything else you might want to play when sent to the grave. Really, all the Power of the Elements cards are just great for the deck. Beyond that, I've stuck true to the link climbing and summoning that it can do, and if nothing else, I enjoy using the zombie synchros as like a pseudo in-theme toolbox alongside my big ritual boys. If you're curious about the cost, boy do I have good news for you though. The most expensive card for Vendreads on TCG Player has a market price of $150, and it goes down from there. Most your zombie support cards generically are pretty cheap and have common prints as well, so this is a very affordable deck right now in paper. If you're looking on Master Duel, I believe Savior is their one ultra rare, and then they've got a number of super rares, so it's not too expensive in that either. I do hope we get more support like in Power of the Elements. It is a really fun deck to toolbox with and play. So, if you're a fan of zombie shenanigans, you're interested in using those crazy good generic zombie staples you've heard so much about, but you also want to play a ritual deck that won't make your friends have Drytron war flashbacks and count as some breaching of, war crimes for some people based on how much people hate Drytron, and you want something with a variety of playstyles and some bomb-ass artwork, then, truth be told, you should play Vendread. Thank you for watching. Leave a like and a comment if you enjoyed, and feel free specifically to comment any sort of lie you want about Spawn in the comments, because I have no idea about Spawn or anything in specific. It looks cool, but I'm never actually going to look into it, so by all means, enlighten me. As always, subscribe to YGO Strats so you too can be a true duelist.